So Siobhan, I really want to talk to you about the difference between the health coaching approach and the expert approach. So we tend to use the traditional expert approach as health professionals, and we are the health expert. And as the expert, we know what's best for our client. We even choose the goals they want to work on. So they'll come in to see us and we'll say, great, you want to stop smoking, because we assume that's what they want. And we also then tell them how they're going to do it. And I think what we measure is we measure their outcomes. You know, did their HbA1c improve? Did their blood pressure go down? And all of those other indices that we use in health. And what we found that when it comes to behaviour change, it's not really an effective model. And the healthcare model, health coaching model is far more effective. So can you talk to that, the differences between that traditional model and the health coaching model?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, just like what you were saying before, the traditional model is the health practitioner is here and the patient is here. So it's more of an expert health practitioner, and the patient is it's more of a passive role, as opposed to the health coaching approach, which is more of an equal collaborative role, where the health practitioner may be an expert in their area, but the patient or client is an expert in themselves. So it's very different in that regard. So it starts off being an equal relationship. So that's probably the first point. When, like, from an expert point of view, as the expert, then you take that role on and you think, okay, I'm the expert, so therefore I'm there to tell you what to do. I'm therefore to give you advice, give you information. And then as the patient or client, you are then to take that and to do that. Whereas the coaching approach is around only doing that with permission for a start, sort of saying, do I have your permission to go through this assessment or to do an assessment with you? And these are the reasons why. But it's also around saying, what would you like to do? And what is important to you? And how do you think you could do it? What sort of, have you been thinking about, you know, any strategies, what comes to mind, and supporting someone to come up with their own reasons for change and then how they're going to do it. So effectively they choose their own goals, their strategies, their plan. They have their own reasons for change, as opposed to us telling them that they should change because of these risk factors. And that's why it's important to them. And therefore these are also the ways that you should do it, because this is the evidence and this is what works, or what you know as a practitioner to work. So it's very different in that regard. And why the health coaching approach has been shown to be more effective with lifestyle related conditions is because autonomy is very important. You know, if someone needs to feel in control of their life, and they need to feel responsible and empowered, and if we are telling them what to do, we're removing that autonomy and that control and that responsibility and the power. Essentially, we're rendering someone powerless, and we're rendering someone to be passive in this whole process. And we know, yeah, from the research that it's just not as effective. Like, people have to own it. And you know yourself, if you decide you want to do something, you're much more likely to do it than if I told you what to do and how to do it. And you know that if you've got kids, or even if you don't, you know, if someone tells you what to do, you probably don't feel like doing it, right, Sharon?
Totally. No one likes being told what to do and how to do it. Nobody.
Yeah, exactly. So so it's an approach where we basically just respect where you're at. And if you don't want to do something, that's okay, but we're here to support you if you do want to do something, and we can support you to explore your decision to change. Mm-hmm. So it just comes in from that much more respectful angle, where you're both collaborative, you're deciding on this together, you're in this journey together, as opposed to that, as I said before, not even approach. The other thing we don't do in coaching, which we tend to do sometimes in a traditional approach, is information overload. We tend to, give them lots and lots of information. Whereas a coaching approach, you're checking in and you're saying, is this enough? Do you want more? You're working out what the level of information is that is right for that patient. And some people can take on more, some people can take on less. We do know from research that usually people are a bit overwhelmed if there's more than 2 or 3 goals set in a consultation. So we generally don't try to, even if someone's enthusiastic, we'll check in with them and say, do you think it's likely that you'd be able to achieve more than, say, 3 goals in this, in the next week or 2? And usually most people go, oh, maybe not. Let's stick to the 2 goals and we'll see how we go when we catch up next time. So that's another difference between the two. What have you experienced as a difference between the two?
Oh, well, I'm just laughing about the information overload, because in my time as a dietitian, I was so guilty of that. So guilty. And people would leave with a page of action points. And then when they looked overwhelmed, I'd then go back and say, well, we'll just do 1 or 2. Just start at the beginning. Oh, no wonder that, they didn't come back, or they didn't take action. Even if they were halfway through, they were enrolled and engaged in the idea. By the time I'd lost them, by the time I'd given them 50 action points. But I'm going to say, sorry to cut you off, but one thing that I found really funny was that when people would say, oh, great, you're a dietitian. Can you talk to me about my diet? And I'd say, sure. What do you think you need to change? And they'd be like, oh, I know I drink too much. I know I eat too much sugar. I know, that this is my problem. Too much snacking at night. So it's really funny how then when people come to us as health practitioners, we think we know what they need to do, and that they don't, and that we don't respect them as someone who's probably thought of the number of different strategies that they can use to eat less at night or to drink less. Like, when people want to change their behaviour, they are the expert and they have thought of it. And it's really disrespectful as a health practitioner to assume, not even check in. And I didn't do that as a dietitian. I wouldn't check in and say, what have you tried before? What do you feel that you can do? Where would you like to start? I'd be like, great, you're obviously ready to go, and here's your list of action points, and here's some really fantastic fun ways that you can make it happen. And it was just, people didn't need the information. They had
exactly. Yeah, and particularly, as you said, for clients that have been thinking about it, those ones that are on the fence, or preparing to change or whatnot. So, and again, that's that checking in, working out where someone's at, if they have been thinking about it, instead of assuming that they haven't been thinking about it already. But yeah, don't worry, I used to do exactly the same too. And as soon as I saw someone didn't look like confident, or they didn't look like they were going to go away and do something, I would give them more information. I'd be like, oh, what about this one? What about this one? What about this one? And I just think, oh my goodness, that poor person was getting even more overwhelmed. Was probably just nodding at me and going, I just got to get out of here before she gives me her textbooks or something.
So many people must have pretended that they were going to, oh, great, yes. Like I think I would have had a high incidence of pretend agreement. Yes.
Agreement.
And I do that with health practitioners. I don't like what they're saying to me when they're telling me what to do. I'll go, yeah, I'll try that. Yep. Oh, I'm writing a list right now. And meanwhile, I'm thinking, I am not listening to you.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for my life. Exercising in the morning is ridiculous. No. But we just...
The other thing, the other thing I was going to say was the difference between the traditional approach and the health coaching approach is, in the traditional approach, you can get frustrated with excuses, or you can get frustrated when people aren't doing the behaviour, particularly if it's like a review consultation and someone comes back in. You can express disappointment, and then the client or patient will feel disappointed, and they'll feel like they've failed you. And again, that's because it's not collaborative and you haven't set it up in a particular way, that they feel that they're disappointing you and they're letting you down, because it was your goals and it was your strategies. But if we set up a mindset for change from the get-go, which is around being curious, having more of a trial and correction mindset, where have a go, see what works, see what you enjoy. If something doesn't work, that's okay. We can just have a chat about that next time and work out whether we need to do a different plan, different goal, do things a bit differently next time, or work out a plan for getting around that barrier or challenge. So those setbacks are essentially learning opportunities. They're not failures. They're just literally opportunities where we can say, okay, that's really interesting that didn't work out. I wonder why that was. And if we can get patients and clients to think like that, then one, they're going to be much more likely to show up for appointments because they're not going to feel like they're letting you down. And they also show up for appointments because they know it's going to be helpful. They know it's going to be a collaborative conversation where you literally work through why something didn't work. And then you work through, okay, well, how can we build upon the things that did work? So it's actually a really constructive conversation where they know they're actually going to feel good during the conversation and leave feeling really positive and good, as opposed to feeling guilty or disappointed or bad about themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about more about the process and the learnings. It is about the outcome, whether they did or didn't do the behaviour. It's about what they've learned about themselves on the way, and how they've realised that actually they don't like boot camp. They are never going to do 6 a.m. boot camp. So why do they keep signing up and failing and feeling bad about themselves when really it doesn't even work for them? So yeah, I agree. It's so interesting, that mindset, and how getting them to think about curiosity and getting them to imagine that they're a scientist and they're just trying the experiment, and maybe it worked, maybe it didn't. And even that seems to take the pressure off, the fact that it's an experiment. Let's experiment with this week.
Yeah. And they're also, they are growing, doing that. They are moving forward. It's because they're learning about themselves, because they're reflecting on the process, because they're working out what didn't work. As you said, like, I worked out I didn't like boot camp. Like, I worked out, that's a moving forward. That's a process. If you've actually taken the time to think and just sit back with that curious mindset, then you're going to move yourself forward in that behavior change journey, as opposed to sticking your head in the sand because you felt bad because you didn't achieve the goal. That's where you get stuck and you move backwards, because you regress, because you don't feel like you're actually making any forward momentum. So that's when you said it's not necessarily about the outcome. It is, but it's really about the process and learning about yourself and what works for you, and being fully engaged in that process. And the outcomes might not necessarily be an outcome of going to boot camp. The outcome might be, I learned more about myself, and I actually learned what I like and what I don't like. That's an outcome.
Yeah. So what would be some of the other mindsets for change that would encapsulate health coaching, apart from curiosity and that sort of experimentation mindset?
So I guess when we talk about mindsets, we probably have to separate them out to, there's your mindset as a coach or a health practitioner, and there's the client's mindset that you foster and you nurture right from the get-go and throughout your whole relationship. So as a coach, if we're talking about coaching mindset first, it's to be, totally open, not judgmental, have this unconditional positive regard for people, to, obviously to be empathetic and to be deeply curious yourself. I think as a good health coach and health practitioner, you have to be really, really interested and curious about the client in front of you and what makes them tick and why they do what they do, and don't make assumptions. So instead of sitting there and think, oh, it's quicker to just make an assumption about this person. I've seen things like this before, so they must be like this. Yeah. So I'm going to say this and I'm going to prescribe this. Health coaching more is around dropping those assumptions, and asking questions to really get to know that person and what drives them. And only then, if you're asking the right questions and you have that deeply curious mindset, it will help your client to also be deeply curious, and for them to look inside themselves and for them to have those insights and aha moments. Yeah. What about you? What do you think is important in a coach's mindset?
Yeah, I think that, being able to put our own filters aside. We've all got our, like you said, the assumptions that we make that, well, it's just easy. It's just easy. You should be able to do it. You should just, I find it easy. So to be able to, come from nothing, to have that really open, curious, that we don't know anything about this client and we want to learn. And also that beautiful, like you said, the unconditional positive regard, the belief that we bring, that we believe they can do it, and that we believe they've got the knowledge inside them, and that they don't need us to come to the rescue. They just need us to help them uncover the gold that's within them. They're probably, they're probably the two ones that make the big difference for me, being really open. And you know what, the other one is letting go of feeling like I have to know. So, and you sort of talked about it earlier, you know, when they come in, you don't think, right, I know what I need to get to with this client. You can let go of that. It's letting it go where it goes, and it's always directed, and there's a strategic element to coaching, but there's not that need to feel like you're in control of what's going to happen. They talk about coaching, it's a dance. So you aren't in control of the dance, but it's about the two people moving in sort of in a unison.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I think, when people are learning health coaching, they feel a bit scared because they feel like, oh, I'm going to lose control of this, and then where's the consultation going to go? But ultimately, you don't. Like, if you just sit back and you listen and you're asking the right questions and you're reflecting, even if you make it, and you don't have to be perfect. That's the thing. Neither you or your client needs to be perfect. So if you say something and you think, oh, I don't know why I said that, just say, look, can I rephrase that? Do you mind if I rephrase that? Or actually, do you mind if I ask a different question? And that's totally fine. You do that all the time. You don't have to be perfect. The other thing around control is, I think sometimes our ego, and we have to be aware of when we feel like, well, I've learned all this knowledge and I've gone to university with this many number of years, and I like having the expert approach, and I like being the expert in the room, and someone, you know, like referring to me as doctor, or just referring to me in a way that assumes that I'm a senior to them. And we have to really let go of that, because it's just, that's our ego. That's us wanting to feel like we're important. But ultimately, it actually is a barrier towards health coaching and actually helping someone to change. So we need to actually put all that aside, put the ego aside, and literally just adopt that coaching approach, which is completely supportive and saying, you know what, you're equal to me. There's no hierarchy in this room. I completely respect you as an equal. Because if we're putting the ego up there, it says I actually don't respect you as much as myself. And I think that's not really helpful in terms of coaching.
And not nice to be on the receiving end of either.
Yeah.
And you know, it's letting go of that. You know, when you're equal, it is up to them what they do with their life. They don't have to do anything. They're not non-compliant. If they continue to do a behaviour that is not important to them, but it's important to you, that's okay, because there'll be other things in their life that they are ready and willing to change, and you can work on those things first. And because health is holistic, it's funny how, you know, there's this ripple effect from one behaviour changing. You know, they start walking for 10 minutes a day, and all of a sudden they're choosing healthier meals, and then they're sleeping better, or they start sleeping better, and all of a sudden they start exercising. And, you know, like, it's quite interesting, the holistic nature of health coaching too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the other thing that we were talking about was the client's mindset. We have been talking about that as we've gone through. What would you like to add around a client's mindset in terms of fostering and nurturing it? We've talked about things like trial and correction and curiosity and being a scientist. What else is important in terms of helping a client develop the right mindset for change?
I think for me, it's that growth mindset. It's that ability that you actually can change. You are not who you think you are. And so getting your clients to understand that if they put the effort into something, they can get results. Because quite often they come in with this mindset that I'm bad at something and I can't do it. And so helping them to understand that nothing's fixed in terms of behaviours, and you can change behaviours, and helping them with that confidence cycle, you know, the small achievements that then over time become big achievements and actually change how they see themselves. They stop being, I don't exercise. They become, I'm a person who exercises. I'm a person who eats well, and they actually change their belief in themselves, and we help them to see that.
Yeah, it's huge, that growth mindset. It's, if people aren't aware, we're going to put links to research about the growth versus fixed mindset. And it'd be interesting for you to see if you feel like you have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset, or if you used to have one. But the fixed mindset is around, if I don't try, I can stay successful and I can avoid failure. So it's that whole fear to try. Whereas a growth mindset is around, success is about learning. It's about trying new behaviors. It's about the effort that you put in, as opposed to just the outcome. It's around, I've got the ability to learn anything, that I can, versus like the fixed mindset, which is, I'm frustrated, so I give up. It's much, that's why it's more sort of fixed. It's like not liking to be challenged, their confidence, someone's confidence decreasing when they make mistakes, whereas that growth mindset is around, it's okay to make mistakes, and that's part of the learning process, and I'll continue to grow from there. Like that setback is a learning opportunity. That's a growth mindset. Also, it's around I guess what we've alluded to, sort of valuing the process and tackling problems, and working on new issues, and having that openness to do that, which you want in a coaching scenario, as opposed to someone feeling like everything has to be perfect. It's, I can't try, I don't want to fail, I'm scared of failure. I'm blaming other people or external things for the fact I can't be successful, or, can't try this. So it's around, it's actually a really crucial part, I think, of health coaching, that developing that growth mindset and getting someone out of that fixed mindset. So we need to have it as coaches, and we need our clients or patients to have it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is accountability.
Yeah. Sorry, what was that?
Fostering that accountability, that checking in with themselves. What are they willing to do? What are they, not necessarily the accountability to the coach, although that definitely can help, but getting them to be self-reliant in the way that they track their sleep, or they might use other ways of tracking to sort of go, oh, I did it, like marking the days off in the calendar, that type of thing, so that they don't need a coach. They don't need us to check in with them for the rest of their lives. They develop that self-accountability that will take them forwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.